Welcome to another great Beacons of Light show. Joining me today is Deacon Eulis Simien. Welcome to the show, Deacon Simien.
Well, it's certainly my pleasure to be here.
Well, Eulis, we've known each other for a long time, and I've been blessed to see you join the Society of St. Vincent de Paul at Sacred Heart. But what made you open to that call to find and seek the forgotten?
Well, actually, it was my wife. She was recruited by some former members who have now passed on, but they were a great example for her. And so she was involved, and she was out making home visits, and it just wasn't quite my thing at the time. And so, of course, I would support her in what she was doing. And then one day, she stops me and she says, "I need a partner. I don't have a partner to go make a visit." So I said, "Oh, sure, of course." And so I went with her, and I got hooked. It was such a moving experience to be in proximity to someone who was in circumstances that I've never really experienced. I didn't grow up with a lot of affluence as a child, but I mean, I did not live in the circumstances of the people that we serve most of the time. And yet to see the faith that they had, it just moved me into, like I said, I got hooked. So,
And that's the powerful. I mean,
yeah.
you and those out in the audience, if you're not from Baton Rouge, you're watching from somewhere else, maybe around the country, you're a recognized attorney here in the community, well respected. So this is outside your comfort zone, and it impacted you in such a
Yeah.
powerful way.
Yeah, I would say it's probably not outside my comfort zone, because the reason I became an attorney is because I wanted to serve people. I wanted to make a difference in our community, and I saw that as a means of doing that. And so kind of fit within where I was. It's just I wasn't doing it in that way at first until, like I said, I went on that visit, and thereafter, every other Saturday, I was there.
You were going into, when you go in a
Mhm.
courtroom, it's a courtroom, but when you go into someone in need, you see the face of Christ, you're going into Christ's home.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We have to look at it that way because, it's certainly what he asked us to do.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And when you're called to make these visits, I also have witnessed the faith of those who can't pay the rent, can't pay the utility bill, or living on the streets. It touches you in a powerful way, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you sit back and wonder, would I be as faithful as this person is if I were going through what they're going through right now? And I hope the answer would be yes, but I can't guarantee that.
Well, we're all called to count our blessings in the world. And what shaped your faith life? What was that blessing in your life that opened you to become an attorney, opened you to make a home visit, and opened you to witness that faith and how it impacted your life?
I can't say it's any one thing because we all have so many blessings that we have to be cognizant of. And I'm a firm believer in that everything that we experience in our life shapes who we are today. And so I can't point to one thing in particular. I do know that growing up, my parents exposed me to our faith. But like most people, I had to make my own decision as I became an adult as to what I wanted to do. And there was a particular couple that Tammy's my wife, Tammy and I came to know through a Bible study program, probably 30 years ago now at least. And they had a tremendous impact on both of us. We were what I would describe as lukewarm Catholics. That's the term I like to use for it, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
We were doing what we're supposed to do,
Yes.
meeting our obligations, but being exposed to them really impacted us because we saw how they lived their life and wanted to be like that. And so that was probably the biggest influence as an adult that I've had.
Well, you're describing some people I know, and it's very powerful when you hear that.
Yeah.
And because we're all called to live our faith and to live it in action, and that's really what the Society of St. Vincent de Paul does.
Yeah. It does. And, and one of the things that I try to think about whenever I proceed through my life is I once read this, and it was, our greatest goal in life ought not to be our own salvation. It ought to be to bring others to salvation. And, I think in part the society helps to do that. It helps me to reach my goal, hopefully, of salvation, but it also presents me with an opportunity to be able to shed that light on others, to help them find their goal in life.
Well, before we went on camera, we were talking about the show and some topics that we wanted to hit on. I says, every time I'm sitting in this chair, I hear something that's powerful and it changes me internally. And what you just said changed me tremendously, because you said that, we need to focus on the salvation of others, because that's what salvation's about. Right. Is sharing God's love with everyone in our lives, especially those who may be in need, but everyone, because if you achieve that, finding salvation for yourself should be there, right?
It's going to come. It's going to come. If you're working on trying to be there to be a change factor in other people's lives, you can't help but change your own life. And yes, you'll get yours as well, but the focus needs to be on this community, because we're not created to be individuals. We're created to live in communion and to work in a community to try to bring that entire community to salvation.
No doubt. And, we always are looking at, how do you define a modern day disciple? You just did it. I mean, it's because, St. Peter, St. Paul, all of them went to their death trying to do what you just said, is the salvation and change in others. And I guess in a tremendous way, the society does that by giving members the opportunity to grow in their faith. And you've witnessed that among the members there at Sacred Heart, have you not?
Oh, yes, certainly. And of course, the society does it by helping people to grow in their faith. But at the same token, while they're worried about certain economic issues, it's more difficult. I mean, I encounter people every day and their faith is tremendous while they're dealing with these things, but we also need to focus on our ability, to the extent we can, if we can help, to help financially, because that will open up some additional avenues for them to be less worried about those things and more focused on their faith and finding their salvation.
And as your faith life has continued, what opened you up to the call to become a deacon?
I'm gonna have to answer that one the same way I answered earlier. It's not one thing. It's just a course of my life and different things that have occurred. I was ordained 2 years ago, and so I was right on the cusp of not being young enough to get ordained, but unfortunately I snuck right in there. But it's something I had thought about for a long time, but as a practicing attorney, there was a point where my schedule really wouldn't permit me to commit the time and the resources that I needed to commit to do it properly, and so I held back for a while. But I got to the point in my career that I'm still extremely busy, but I have some other things in place that helps with some of that busyness. And so I got to that point and I said, now's the time. And I made that decision and discussed it with my wife. And I'll tell you a funny LSU story in a bit if you want, about how she knew it was right for me.
Well, I'm going to tell you, we're going to say that, and we'll cover that on the next segment and talk to Deacon Eulis about how his faith life has been shaped, and hear that special LSU story when we come back. For over 20 years, the St. Vincent de Paul Community Pharmacy has served our area. We provide prescription medicines for those who have nowhere to turn for this most basic healthcare need. Please, if you need your medicine or you know a family member that needs their medicine, contact us. Kay, how can they get in touch?
383-7450.
Give us a call today and spread the word so that we can ensure no one goes without their prescription medication. Baton Rouge is known for a lot of great things, great food, but also great football and a great university, LSU, as well as Southern University. But Eulis and I are Go Tigers. So tell us that Tiger story there, Eulis.
Definitely. But anyway, so as you know, since you sit right down the aisle from me.
But I have two seats, just two. He's got a mountain of seats in
Whatever.
the area I sit.
But anyway, we sit in the same area, so you know I'm an avid
you
fan.
Yes,
So, and I used to not only like to go to the home games, I would travel. I'd go to in 11-game season, I'd probably make 9 games a year or 10, depending on what happens in a particular year. And so when I started discerning more seriously the diaconate, my wife and I went to a few classes because she had to be involved as well, because it's a family decision. It's not an individual decision. And we learned that the classes were going to be held on Saturdays. And so I told her I wanted to do it. And she said, well, the minute you knew, she told me, the minute you knew the classes were on Saturday and you were still willing to do it, I knew you must have been called. So she gave me her permission at that point.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because I was going to have to miss some games.
And I remember you missing those games. And I was thinking this morning before taping the show, I said, what am I going to bring up? And because I know how much you love LSU, but you know, in all seriousness, whether it's football, the Tigers, all those things are so far on the bottom of the list about what we're talking about. It's about serving our good Lord and recognizing our weaknesses and recognizing how much we need Him in our lives. And so, but I was going to bring up that point because it is a witness, because I saw you miss some pretty big games.
Yeah, well, but it was well worth it.
Oh, without a doubt.
I did have them T-bowed, as they say, and put them on record and got to watch them. But
yeah, well, you know, for those around the country where college football ain't a big thing, it's a big thing down here.
Huge.
Huge, yes. But no doubt about it, you know, you're an attorney. And we talked a bit about this earlier. Frederick Ozanam was a law student, became an attorney, and he was so committed to the society. But whether you're an attorney, a physician, or some other type of important community leader, why is it important to open yourself up to doing good work like the Society of St. Vincent de Paul?
It's no matter what good work you do, no matter how much you dedicate yourself to trying to bring about a change globally in society, it's nothing like individually encountering someone who's in need and individually letting that person touch your heart, and hopefully you touch their heart. And that exchange between you, it's nothing like that. And so that's probably the biggest thing.
Now, at Sacred Heart, y'all have a wonderful and a very active and vibrant conference of people that, small group, but they're dedicated to serving Christ in a powerful way. And your pastor, Father Josh Johnson, wow, he is on fire with that important part of the gospel. Why is that important in a parish?
It helps us to recognize the community, the communal nature in which we all live. Because we can isolate ourselves. We can be in our own little parish with our own little things, but it's nothing like looking at the bigger picture. The fact that we have people that surround us, and particularly in Sacred Heart's situation, right in our own neighborhood that are in need of help is something that we have to open ourselves to. Because, you know, when Christ was here physically on earth, he's here on earth obviously spiritually, but he's not physically on earth as he was. What did he do? He went out. He ministered to people. He helped the poor. He helped the sick. He helped the hungry, the homeless, you name it. And what did he call on us to do? To do the same thing. And so it's so important as a community that we can look at that obligation that we have to minister to the folks around us. And
we're called to do that. You know, Sacred Heart, for those not in Baton Rouge or the area, it's a parish that has some very wealthy individuals there, and there's a part of the parish that there's a lot of poverty. And so that kind of, I guess, view of the importance of community is essential to success in parish life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And as you know, our pastor reminds us about that about once a week at least.
What would be your message for anyone? You've been through this, you continue to grow spiritually every day, I know, but somebody in any parish, whether it's the Diocese of Baton Rouge or throughout anywhere that anybody sees this show, why should they be open to whether it's the society or some other, mission of the church to get involved in? What would your message be? Get them out of their comfort zone.
Well, I think the biggest part of the message is that we look inward to try to see what we need to improve ourselves. And sometimes, and the inward looking is a wonderful thing because certainly we have to focus on that. But sometimes when you reach out and you experience other people and experience other people's situations that you have not lived through, it can help us better understand ourselves and where we're at as an individual, and certainly as a parish, collectively, it can help us better understand where we are by seeing others whose circumstances we might not otherwise fully appreciate.
Well, I think that's the journey of any Vincentian, to look at ways in which we can grow and kind of scatter the Lord's love in a way that really impacts as many people as possible. And you've been on our charitable campus where we serve food and shelter and provide prescription medication. Why are those kind of very material supports to people in need? Why is that important?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that is not the most important thing in our lives. But as human beings, as fallen human beings, we have to help people in those situations so that they can make room to put those things aside for at least a little while in a day in their lives, and then therefore focus on the bigger picture of God and the role that He plays. Now, like I said, many of them already do, but it helps to not have that last worry. They're sitting there while you're trying to focus.
Right, and that is so critical. And we do have so many people from out the community that just take their time, their talent, and their treasure. When you see that impact, what does it tell you as a deacon? How uplifting is it to you to see people putting their faith into action?
Oh, it's tremendous to see how we can come together, and when we do, what we can accomplish. We each can individually accomplish a little bit, and we can't overtax ourselves. But when we take our little bit and combine it with a little bit of the next person, we can change the world. We can do it one person at a time. I know that's cliche, but it's a cliche that's true.
We can change the world, and that's one thing that Frederick Ozanam really focused in the early days of the Society's ministry. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the Society and the importance of everyone being a part of making change, one person at a time. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul's first cookbook, Taste and See, is the gift which helps share the goodness of the Lord with those most in need. Featuring recipes from Chef John Foles, each chapter begins with a short story about one of our special work programs. To order your copy of Taste and See, please call the Society or visit our website. Help multiply blessings for the neediest in our community. I'm really enjoying this show with Deacon Eulis Simien as we talk about the Tigers, but more importantly, we're talking about faith in a very important way and spiritual growth. We talked about the Society's home visits and how it can really change your life spiritually. Are there some cases, Eulis, that just touched your heart remarkably so?
Yeah, just about everyone does, but there are certain ones that I come back to constantly because they had such a tremendous impact. One particular visit, it was with a man who was in necessitous circumstances. Most time it's women, but sometimes it's men. And we visited with this young man who was struggling financially. He was trying to do everything that he could to get the monies that he needed to take care of his affairs, but he just couldn't because of his particular circumstances. I'm not going to go into details right now. But he told us about how he had reached out to other groups and how they kind of treated him like a social service kind of thing. And he shared with us how much it meant to him that we took the time to go and sit down with him in his home and visit with him, to not only see what can we do to write you a check, but what can we do to help better understand who you are and where you are and how we might be able to help financially and otherwise. He just said, look, guys, it means so much to me that even if you can't provide the financial assistance, because sometimes we can't, it just means so much, and it's restored my faith in religion, that a religious organization would take the time and come and be with me like this. I constantly think about that visit because it just tells me that hopefully we're achieving what it is. One of our goals is, obviously one is to help me be a better person by my exposure, but to bring others along, as I mentioned earlier, to bring them to their salvation. So that's one of the ones that did. Others, not just one, but many times you'll go in a house and there's absolutely nothing, furniture or anything. I recently had a visit like that. A woman, 2 children, nothing in the house except one little work area that she had meticulously put together because she was working. She was working from home, and she made sure she had that place ready so she could try to do what she could to provide for her family. But they had nothing else in the house. And there's, like I said, not just her kids were there as well. And so seeing those sorts of things, then it's not troubling because I know that there's a reason for it, but it certainly makes me want to see what we can do to help people like that.
Powerful stories. I mean, you see so many of them.
Yeah.
And off camera, we talked a little bit. I didn't want to hit you with this surprise question, but I've never been blessed being at Mass when you've given a homily before.
Well, you're going to have to try that.
I got to try.
Wednesday, 8 o'clock, be there.
Well, there you go. I need to be there because I'd love to hear what kind of, obviously, in South Louisiana, we're known for our food and flavoring in the recipes. Well, what's the recipe for success in your homilies? What is a thing that you continue to hit on because it's the most important thing of our faith?
Well, I'm going to have to use a lawyer term. You might be assuming a fact, not an evidence when you say they're successful. But there is something that I do like to try to focus on, and that is the immeasurable mercy and love of God. Because as we focus on that, it deepens our spirituality, and that's what I like to focus on in my life. And so many of the times when I give a homily, it's the underlying theme behind what I like to talk about.
Well, no doubt you've learned a lot of lessons throughout your spiritual growth, and especially with the society. And now you are the deacon that's in charge of all our special works relative to the spiritual growth and making sure we're right on target. One of the things you've done at least a few times now is you met with one of the deacon groups that came and served at the society, and then you also with deacon candidates that are coming to share their time. Why do you think it's so important to expose those who are ordained like yourself to the works of the society through their education process?
Well, all the folks who get ordained are good folks. They're very spiritual folks. But as I mentioned earlier, we all have our limitations based on our own past experiences. And so I think it's a great exposure to expose them to the society and its work, because they can then experience some things like I came to do that maybe they didn't experience in their own life. Right. It gives them a perspective on the situation that sometimes people find themselves in that we might not quite understand because of our lack of exposure to it.
Yeah, because like we've been talking about, our eyes are constantly open if we allow them to be, isn't it, Deacon Eulis?
Yeah, we can look, but we don't necessarily see unless we try.
And sometimes there's something, we're being told something, but we're not listening. Huh?
In fact, my last homily was on that topic.
Well, I believe God talks to us. Christ talks to us all the time. I know He does, but am I listening? That's the problem.
Are we?
And do you think that when we get, and I always go through this, if you watch, as you know, on the show, I constantly talk about the comfort zone, because it is easy to get comfortable in our lives. It's important in our faith lives to kick ourselves out of that zone, huh?
Yeah. And sometimes it takes a stimulus to do that, a catalyst
Right.
to get us moving and being exposed to other individuals, experiencing as best you can through an interaction with them what they've experienced can certainly help.
Saints that you get inspiration from, who are they? Who really are you inspired by?
Mother Teresa is one of my favorites. You know, obviously because of what she stood for and what she believed in so far as service to others. St. John Paul II, for all the change that he was able to bring into the world, not by picking up guns or fighting or anything like that, but just by expressing love. And he just changed the world. So certainly, I guess I'm only mentioning modern day saints, but that's probably our tendency as in a modern day society to focus on those. But certainly there are many that have brought about those sorts of things in the world.
Those are great examples and my favorites as well. You know, as we kind of close out the show with about a minute to go, I like, you know, Christ's message to us was, "For I so loved you." You spread the love of God to others. Why should we love one another?
Well, as he taught us, that which you do to the least of my brothers, you do unto me. And that's what we should be looking at when we see other people. They are Christ personified today. And so that's why we should do it.
Well, thank you so much, Deacon Eulis. You know, Blessed Frederick Ozanam, an attorney up there in heaven, and I think you're on your way too. And so many great examples of saints, whether it's St. Vincent de Paul, St. Louise behind us. Thank you for everything you do in our community.
I've gotten more out of it than I've ever given.
And thanks for being on the show. I'll see you again soon at St. Vincent de Paul. We hope you've enjoyed our show. If you'd like to get involved with the Society's mission and really make a difference here locally, go to svdpbr.org. We'll see you again next week on Beacons of Light.